Right, this is Evo Toka. This is part two with Coach Ray, and I am bringing Ray on because I have been with him for a few years now. I know his intent in terms of why he's coaching. I'm very familiar with his philosophy as a coach, and I give him so much credibility because he understands the game at several levels, not just dealing with kids, but even at very high levels. Just speaking with him about the game, he knows the nuances and he understands the nuances in terms of things are not just black and white. There's a lot of other things you have to consider when making decisions inside this game. And I'm going to continue off with our last podcast we did with the first question. What are the differences for what you focus on in each age group?
Well, Kevin, thank you for having me back. I'm excited for the second episode. But to answer the question, what is it that I focus on with each age group? Technical ability and fundamentals during this time.
And is this and by the way, this is from let's say 5 to 18 years old.
So not necessarily. So from the ages of 5 to about 12 to 13, it's all technical ability and fundamentals for the most part. And then once we get into 13, when they start understanding the game a little bit more, you can start diving into the tactical side of it.
Okay, so that's interesting. So from this, you said 5 to 12 or 13 is fundamentals, technical ability.
Yeah.
So what percentage of the training, how long are the trainings?
Hour and 30 minutes for the most part, or for the younger ages, about an hour.
So how do you, what's the percentage of what you do in that 1.5 hours?
Fundamentals and technical ability?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really the entire practice.
So even for 10-year-olds, that's it. Now, first off, I gotta say, I like that, but I'm surprised because I remember playing a team a month ago with my 17, so they're 6, 7, and we were already playing a team that in the game they stayed, their players stayed in their exact positions and they never moved.
Okay.
The left midfielder stayed on the left the whole time. The right midfielder stayed on the right the whole time. The forward always stayed forward. So they had the tactics and all that at 6 and 7. And then I forgot what age it is. Maybe it's 8 years old or 7 years old. They go to 77. So that's a big difference from 4v4 to 77. And then a lot of people I know want to go to tactics even before they reach that age. I have, again, 6 and 7 year olds, but coaches already have them practicing for 77. Right. You know what I mean? So I thought that's very interesting because I always wonder how many coaches are influenced by what everybody else is doing,
right?
As opposed to doing your own thing. So I guess to ask you what. And this actually goes to the next question. Why do you believe it's important to focus on these things? Why not go 40, 50% of your trainings on tactics, at 8, 9, 10 years old? Why take it to 12 years old?
Well, because it's not to say that there's not games that we go out there and say, hey, we want to do this. This, we want to accomplish this in this game, and that's where the tactics fall into play. But in practice, the reason why the focus is fundamentals and technical ability is because if you can't do those things, how can you be able to grasp the tactic that we're going to put out there? Does that make sense?
Can you go deeper on that?
Yeah. So if you can't receive the ball the proper way, it's how can we work on keeping the ball? Because a lot of the times when you do want to receive, you want to receive away from pressure.
Correct.
And so if you're receiving incorrectly, then how can we even work the tactic of keep the ball?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
that's why I focus on the fundamentals and the technical ability of the players during that age. And to my point again, it's not to say that I'm not teaching them any type of tactical or situations. I am. So to answer it like percentage wise, I'd say 70% of it is technical, and then the rest of it is tactical. 30%, And
what's tactical for you? Because tactical could mean like 3v2 or 2v1.
So many different things, right? A tactic could be, hey guys, we're gonna sit back. You know what I mean? We're gonna sit back, and then at the right moment, we're gonna pressure. That's a tactic. So it's very broad, to your point, but that is for me what a tactic is like. Something that is going to a plan to go into a game with. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
And sometimes on a week-to-week basis, the team is showing you something like at the games, and then I'll go back.
When you say the team is showing you something, which team are you talking about? The other team?
Our team.
Okay.
Our team is showing something like what they can improve on, how we can get better from week to week. Okay. And you start trying to, and I adjust my practices according to that as well. Because there are certain teams that are competing to win. And for those teams, I try to implement what I see week to week with them.
Okay, I see. Because like for me, with the 9 and 10-year-olds that I coach, when I think tactics, at least as far as I go with tactics, it's like I'll do like 3v2 or 4v3, but then I'll work on some tactic, but it'll be within that small sided game. So I'm not gonna do like 7v7. I'm gonna do like 3v2, 4v3. That way they get more touches. But in those smaller games, they're still going to learn, okay, where do I position myself defensively or offensively? It's just in smaller games. Yeah. That way they get more touches as opposed to like 77.
Yeah, it's like instead of attacking it as a whole, it's like you're breaking it down and attacking it piece by piece.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes sense. Like it completely makes sense. So I'm just saying the reason why I focus on technical ability and fundamentals is just like you're not going to be able to go over those tactics with them if they can't
100%
do those fundamentals. And that technical ability and fundamentals, that doesn't sound like skills in shooting. It's kind of like but dude, you can make it fun.
Oh, 100%.
There's definitely ways.
100%. Like with my teams that I coach that are 6 and 7 and 9 and 10, I'm actually more towards your side to where I'll work on technical ability and fundamentals like 80-90% of the time each practice. And almost every drill I do, it's fun. Like players are having fun. They're competing. They're being challenged. I think being challenged is a big one. But I try to do things where they're competing or being challenged, so it's not like routine and boring.
And so I think that's super important, competing and being challenged, because that's what actually makes it fun. The compete, not just doing the drill, not just receiving and doing the drill, but like you actually going versus somebody.
They love it.
Or competing or just making a game out of it.
Making a game out of it. That's what it is. It's actually making a game out of it.
And it creates that culture of competition.
That's what we want. That's another thing. Like you're getting the benefit of them getting that competition every single time, so that they're not just getting it in the game, but you're building that. Okay, sometimes I'm gonna lose, but I can win too, and that grit and that always fighting. But they love it, man. Those games, they love it. And towards this topic too, can you walk us through your process for grouping players in terms of level of play, or I guess you could. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I've learned about this. When we talk about level, I actually think there's something, but I think it's level of competition because the level of play, you can have a player who plays at a high level, but physically he can't keep up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So like, how do you group players in terms of that?
So, kind of to piggyback off of the first question, which was ages, is what we spoke on ages in what to focus on.
Yeah.
So, I don't view soccer by ages. I don't put a number on it because we've all seen where there's professionals that are at 16, 17,
Yes.
and they're young. So it's really hard to put a number on it or an age on it. Basically, for me and how I group players is based on their skill level. You know, and this goes back to mainly when I was doing group trainings. So whenever I first started, I was just doing group trainings, and I believe I had it broken up to rookie phase. What's like what was the next one? Rookie. Trying to remember how I. But basically, there's a lower level, a middle level, and then the highest level.
Three levels.
And so in a group training, when they come to you, it could be you don't know what you're gonna do. They're just coming out to get better. And then based on how I see them, what skill level they're on, like how they're receiving the ball, the physicality and all things, and even age to an extent, right? Is how I group them, and then that way I have all the lower level players together, all the mid level players together, and we're maximizing practices,
And just real quick, so when I think this is important too. Like when you say maximizing practices, what do you mean when you say maximizing practices?
Because you could have a player, an elite player at practice. This is just your team, right? And then you can have a player who's probably not there, and then there's the coach who's right in the middle. And neither player gets a full practice because either we're going too fast for this player or we're going too slow for this player.
Yeah.
So that's where grouping, banding comes into play. I remember back then, I don't know if you remember, but they used to do banding where it was 2 years in each age group. So it was U6, then U8, then U10, then U12. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so now you have these younger players playing with the older players, right? But thinking that you can ban that group, but in all reality, you couldn't by age, but you can by skill level.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, and really, it makes sense when you said that you're not basing it based off of age.
Yeah.
You're basing it, like obviously, said, rookie, and then those two other levels.
So to go into that question a little bit more, my practices will come in, kids will come in, and even within that practice, you still break them up. Like I have 3 levels, right? Recreation, academy, and select, right? But even within those levels, we still break them up even more within those groups.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just imagine players in the line, and there's one player even slowing those players down. And so you gotta also, hey, you go to this line, you go to that line, and to make the practice to maximize the practice. You know what I mean?
I see. So so you're not putting too much on the lower level player, but you're actually challenging the higher level player. So that's what you're talking about when you say maximizing.
Correct.
Let's see.
Yes.
Let's see. And I guess this actually we actually already answered the question, but I was gonna ask, how do you make sure they're being challenged and developed?
And I can dive in a little bit more into it. I mean, the way that I make sure that they are being challenged to develop is like, then they can find like, then there's those they're like graduating from one level to the next level, right? And you ease them into that. Like Timmy might have had a good practice today. Hey Timmy, you want to stay over a little longer, and you can play with the next group that's coming in. Mm-hmm. And now, like, now he's gonna go and struggle, or be challenged in the next phase, you know, or maybe he didn't work so hard that day. And, hey, today we won't need you today. You can stay behind. Now he's like, oh man, I need to work hard so that I can come back next practice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And little things like that will challenge and maximize or really create that culture that you want to, like, not just be put here because of my age, but be put here because this is where I'm at and I need to work hard to get to the next level. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't matter my age. Cause sometimes I'll put, like, I'll literally, in my recreational group, I have 11-year-old practicing with like a 7-year-old. Mm. And so, but that's just where he's at in the skill level. Yeah. You know, and it's just, it is what it is, but he'll grow out of it, you know?
Mm. Okay. So you give then players who perform well the opportunity to move up to the next level so that they can keep striving, like, hey, there's something above where I'm at now. I may be good where I'm at, but there's still a level above me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And how often do you check if kids need to be moved to a different group? And what makes you decide if it's time for them to move? And I guess an example of that would be in the club that I coach for. I guess, let's say there's a season that lasts maybe 2 to 3 months, and you have players set on each team. Do you wait till the next season to move a player, or do you wait every 6 months or a year? What's your process in that?
That's a really good question. And it's consistently, man. Even during practice, like I was saying, if there's a player who's in the wrong line, that could be moved to another line to make everything flow better. Or like I said, when you give somebody that, like, hey, you can stay after practice, it's starting to trigger that next phase, or, hey, this could be coming soon. Or just simply the fact that maybe not all the coaches came today, so you still have to group players together by skill level. So I'm constantly doing it without it being told that it's happening. And then all of a sudden we just see the next step through performance in games, through game performances, through how they practice, things like that is what I'm looking at. Does that make sense?
Now, what about though, like for example, with Coach 17th, right? Or the 16s?
16s.
So like which age group is your son in?
14s.
Okay, so for 14s, do you have like more than one 14 team?
We have 2 14 teams.
Okay, so within those 2 14 teams, do you move players up and down, or do they stay on the same team?
They play, I move players up and down. Or some players will play one game with the lower 14s. Mm-hmm. Then other players play a second game with the strong 14s. Mm-hmm. And then the players that even stand out of that will play a third game with the 13s.
So is that okay? Now on that,
and sometimes they don't play 3 games. Yeah. Sometimes they just play with the middle group, and then with the 13s. And I know I'm saying like middle or 2. Really, it's a girls team and a boys team for the 14s. Okay. And then the girls that play well play with the boys, and the boys and the girls who play well can play with the 13s.
Now, so you're doing you're doing that on a weekly basis. Like, how often are you giving that up? Or, like, for example, another alternative would be even this player, I put him on, let's say, the third team, and he's going to stay on the third team for a year. Or are you saying, hey, we're doing it every
weekly?
Okay, weekly. Okay,
we send out. We'll send out a roster and then move players around. So again, that question when you're saying like when is it? Constantly, constantly within lines, within for games, for tournaments.
Okay,
you know. So based on the situation that we're about to go into, will determine. Okay, we're going into this tournament. Let's just say it's a silver tournament, right? Well, these are the players that I think that can play in this tournament. I group them together and I put them in that tournament. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But on a weekly basis, we play, for example, 4 teams. We'll just stick with them. We play RPO, and then the top 4 teams will play Classic League. Okay, so the ones from the girls team again can play with the boys, right? And then the top from the boys team will play with the Classic League 13 team.
Yeah,
you know, or with the RPL 13s. And in every week, you could win a spot.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to know.
And every week you could win a spot on what team, you know, based on how you're performing, based on how your skill level is, and so on.
Okay, and I say that because with the 4 teams that I coached, and again right here, this is to say that everybody does things differently, but if he said if he could do it again, he would have split the kids on separate teams earlier. I haven't done that with my 17s because I'm like, man, in 3 months, this player's really good. You know what I mean? And this other player that was way ahead of this other player caught up. So for me, I'm kind of like on my 17th roster, I just put everybody on the roster because I'm like, I don't know who's going to play week to week. You know what I mean? Like, there's a kid who's been playing on my lower team, but every game he goes in, he's way ahead of everybody else. And I had to talk to the parents, like, I see what your kid is doing. And I think now is the time I've seen enough. He can go up now. Now I'm pushing him to the next level. So I don't want to set players on certain teams because he needs to be challenged.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to get your opinion on that.
No, I mean, and I feel like that's how I keep players because I wouldn't say that we're a club where the name is just, you know, everybody's going to it or we're recruiting some of the best players. No, it literally comes down to development. Like I don't tell nobody, I don't turn nobody down. You can have 2 left feet, 2 right feet, it don't matter. We're going to take him on. Yeah. You know, but he's going to be properly placed.
Yeah. But like, by the way, we're also a team that takes on anybody.
Okay.
We don't turn people down, but we just place them where they are. And if they're really far behind, like there was a kid who was so far behind from our 4 teams, I talked to them as if they got to be prepared to go to games and only play 5 minutes. And I told him, hey, it's cost this much when we get into select. Like, I tried to give them reasons to not join us, but the parents were so committed. I'm like, you know what? Anybody who's that committed, we're going to take them on. They're doing private lessons now. So I don't turn people away, but I always let the parents know, like, hey, it's going to be hard.
Right. That is good. And when I lost my train of thought, I was talking about how I keep good players.
Yes.
So, so the thing is like, because I never turn anybody down, when we do have a player who's outgrowing their age group, you just move on to the next age group, you know? And now it's like, oh, my son can play up. I'm proud of that, and so on and so forth. And so that's how I'm able to keep, the good players, or how we can retain players, because it's so easy to, hey, now I'm good. Now I'm going to move.
Yeah.
And luckily, I've created this culture, structure, system that will benefit everybody. Every age, every skill level,
And this is important too, because a lot of people, a lot of coaches, and even I remember my dad talking about it when he first started. He kept wondering the same thing, and this is for a lot of coaches out there where, and it's good that you do this, is that when you see that one player is just dominating his age group, move them up. Mm-hmm. So that they know, okay, I can continue to be challenged, and then you can retain your best players.
But sometimes there's parents who maybe don't want their kid to play.
Mm-hmm. Different age group, even though they're dominating.
Well,
we're playing really good,
right. Like, so maybe they think that they're dominating, but maybe they just are okay with them dominating their age group. So maybe they just want to play in that age bracket, but on a stronger team. You know what I'm saying? That could also happen.
Okay.
So I've had it to where, you could come out to one of my practices and you see like a big kid practicing with a small kid, and they're like, that's not pleasing for them for whatever reason, right? They just want their kids to practice with their age. Have you got that?
No, so with us, how we do it is, if there is any difference, like for me, I had a 17. He was so good at the time. Like, he was like a one-man team. I told the parents, like, you guys, your kid is so good, you guys need to leave our team. He was our best player. I was like, you guys need to leave. Your kid is too good.
Can't afford that, bro.
But the thing is,
I don't have that luxury.
No, you know what happened though? So they said, you know what? We love the club. Can we play higher age group? So now they play a higher age group. And now though, our kids are catching up to him. So now they can play with him like within a year and a half. But at that time, he was ahead. So he still plays with us from time to time. But for now, he plays with 1 year older. But we haven't had it yet to where we had an older kid coming down.
And that's more so for practice, not necessarily.
Yeah,
we're not putting
practice. I'm talking about practice. Because normally within our age groups, we have so many teams within an age group.
Yeah.
Like 4 teams, we have 4 teams.
Okay.
So there's usually enough for somebody, except for this one exception that I just talked about. So in every age group, usually there's like 4 teams. So normally there's not a player that's below even the 14. Now, if we only had 2 teams, then we might have to move him down the age group. But because that age group has so many, we can just move him down that age.
Yeah. So in everybody's situation is different, right? And how I'm telling you about how like I group players and stuff like that, it falls along the same lines. It's just you have more numbers in one age group versus me having less numbers in certain age groups, and now I have to move stuff around to make it all happen. You know, so that's where
it's the same philosophy,
right?
But we're just adjusting for our circumstances.
Exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And then this is also another thing that's because youth coaching, it's like, for example, you can get the best youth coach in the world from Germany, but they don't deal with parents like we do.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how good they are. If they can't deal with parents, they can't last here. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because like half of the job or more, especially when kids are, there's an age like when they're teenagers, it's not as bad. You still have to do it. But when the kids are younger, communication is such a big part. And on this, when you use the criteria to separate players into groups, how do you communicate with parents who see things differently than you do? Like if they say, "Hey, like you got to move a player down," you know what I mean? I would imagine that's the hardest part.
Yeah,
Or keep them down.
definitely. It is tough to have tough conversations, right? But I will say that communication can save a nation. You know, like as long as you're being upfront with everybody, there's just no like, caught off by surprise. So whenever a new player comes in, it's always the easiest. And I'm talking about new player, like maybe they're new to soccer or just new to the team in general as well. Because as the moment that they walk in, you're setting the standard, right? This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And so now they are never thrown off or what's going on here. No, they understand because this is what it looked like from day one, and this is what it's continue to look like. You know, so always establishing it from the front, from the jump, helps a lot with those tough conversations.
It does.
But then there is those moments where, Timmy's just not really, and so we have to keep him behind or, hey, coach, I noticed that these players are practicing over here and my son is practicing over here. It's just like, I'll have that conversation. Well, one, I always am open to everybody and having conversations. Like, I think that's super important as well. Because if they can come to you, then they're just going to be talking to the next parent, about their problems and how they're upset. And it's just more like, hey, come talk to me about the problems. Like, I want to help you understand what's going on, So definitely staying open to communication. But that happens, then I'll say, I just don't see him there just yet, but he can get there. What he needs to be doing is, and then I give him action items. Okay? Whether that's doing personal sessions, whether that's going home and doing homework, playing FIFA, watching soccer games, whatever it is. But I'm telling them this is what it's going to take for, if you want him to practice over there, if he wants to practice over there, this is what it's going to take. They're going to take it one in two ways. Like, hey, I'm going to go do it, or they're just going to be, pissed about it or whatnot, and then, find the next thing. So, which is okay. But as long as you have that clear communication, at least they can say, well, I was never told, but no, you have, I did tell you, we did have these communications.
Yeah.
Another thing though, is for all my select players, I sit one-on-ones with them twice out of the year. Okay. In the middle of the season and at the end of the season. And both times they get evaluations. So in those one-on-ones, we're having those communications with those parents and the boys, and it's all on paper. You're getting a grade. So really, it just falls back on you, versus I never knew, So I think to answer that question is just taking charge of it, jumping out in front of it, and communicating, no matter how hard the conversation is. Like, just be honest and truthful to them, and they're gonna do one of two things: either they're gonna go do it, or they're gonna find the excuse not to do it, and that's fine. But what'll happen is you weed out those players that aren't about what you're trying to do, and now then you start collecting. You have this collection of a bunch of these players that we want here. And that's what we want,
Let me tell you one thing, too, that you said that's so important, and I've learned this from the little experience that I have, what I try to do is this is on what you said about day one expectations for new players. I set expectations to the point that is so clear in terms of what I want that I kind of half try to push people away.
Well, when you said it earlier, I was like, that makes complete sense. Like, you're really like, hey, this is gonna be like horrible, and you're gonna. It's like, but if somebody's willing to go through the trenches with you, like,
that's what it is.
That's the kind of career that you
That's
want,
what it
though,
is.
Like,
that's what it is.
So no, that's really great. I remember just back then, whenever I would hire an employee, I love it because not most of the time when I'm trying to hire somebody, it's because I just got rid of somebody, or they got rid of themselves. But then when a new person comes in, it's great because that player or that employee that just left might have had some bad habits, and you're removing those bad habits out, and you're able to start fresh.
Yes.
So if the new employee comes in and you tell them, yeah, every night we scrub the floor with toothbrushes, and you do it the first night, they're gonna think like, dang, we do this every night. Like, they're gonna really go back and think like, do I really want to do this?
Yes.
But it's gonna be set from the jump, and you get to set standards and be clear about it. So overall, it just makes everything a lot better.
Yeah.
But there's times where if you're not that coach and you don't want to have those conversations, you can let that like keep going and keep going. And like I said, we never had that conversation with that parent. She's having it with the next parent, and then the next parent, and then that's what causes chaos.
Yeah.
So
yeah, man, and the reason I say that I don't even do that to be definitely. I do that for everyone's best interest. It's not to be mean, because when I was assisting for the 14s coming in as a coach, I just had to take the players that came to me. Like, I didn't really have much of a say. It was that main coach.
Yeah.
And then one thing I learned over time is that if you don't have players who are on board with your vision, they're either gonna leave now or they're leaving a year.
Yeah.
So now in my 17 day group, I get to set the expectations from the jump. So that's why I'm like, hey, my priority is not to win games. I'm not going to do what it takes to win games when these guys are 6, 7 years old. If you want to be on a team that wins, go somewhere else, because that's not me. There's a time that's going to come in. I'm going to work on tactics and all that stuff. But I always tell them it's around like 12 years old, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with what you want to do, because we all got to know our priorities. So if your priority is to be on a winning team, go to the winning team now. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So it's just like learning, like, you want to set those day one. That's really what it is about. The day one expectations. Yeah, like you said, was very important.
Back then, whenever I was hiring people, it's because it's like the same thing. Like, you're hiring this family to come into your organization or whatnot. We talk about motivational fit, and so do their needs meet your needs, and can you guys come together for that?
Being aware of those needs.
Yeah, and because if you can't, it's just not gonna happen.
Those needs need to be met.
Right. It's just like, no matter how much you want to force it, no matter how much that player is, if they don't, if y'all don't coexist, or see things eye to eye, or both parties are looking to get what they want from each person. Yeah. If that's not happening, it's just not gonna happen.
It's so true.
And this is why you let them know way ahead of time before they, to your point, like, you make it like sound so like, guys, this is not what you think.
But it's like what you said, the needs, because everyone has a need. Yeah. If that need is not being met, it doesn't matter what you do. They're going to get that need from somewhere else. So that's what it is, being self-aware. But another thing you said when you talk to parents, which I think is very good, is that you let them know there is a way to move up and you have to do this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. That's what I like, is very good too, because you're giving them hope in the sense that they can move up, that they're not stuck where they're at. So I really like that too.
For sure. It's just a longevity game. Mm-hmm. So, I also try to make that, whenever I'm explaining that to them, like, I also let them know, like, yeah, you can, it's not just to check off the boxes, like, you do this, this, and this. No, you often then you got to go perform too. You know, so but clear communication, man, so important.
And and this was to sum up the podcast, but I think we just hit this at the end is what role or what importance do you believe open communication with parents plays in a child's success and enjoyment in the game? Like what is the importance of that communication in terms of the child's enjoyment or success? I think part of what you said, if you had to ask me, in my opinion, as far as success, it would be letting them know that if your kid wants to move up, they just can't do what they're doing. They got to do additional stuff. Mm-hmm. I guess the enjoyment part is a little bit harder. And I'm sure you've come across it, like the kid may like something. Like they may like you. They may like the team. But the parent, I don't know, something with the parent. and then that hurts the child's enjoyment of the game.
Those are facts. Like that. What we're kind of jumping in from question to question just because it all is flowing. But I can't stress enough, and I don't know and I know for a fact that not a lot of people do this, but just giving out evaluations is super important because it just establishes where the player is at, you know, in the middle of the season and at the end of the season, so you know what you're going to go into the following year when you're going to sign the contract, you know. And like I said, I don't think it's done enough. But if you do that, if you have those hard conversations, it's going to make everything more enjoyable from the parent standpoint, from the player standpoint, for the coaches as well. You know, and hey, if the parent is not dealing with it, I've also had that conversation where I'm saying, but I don't think that the problem is with Timmy. I think that the problem is with you guys. It happens so often. But I'm telling you, man, not every coach is built to have that conversation. Happens so often. So I think that's also like super important is that the coaches to be able to communicate that or not to be shy to have that conversation or scared or whatnot, because it's either that or they're just going to leave, or it's either that or they're going to create chaos within the club, you know. And it's like, I'd rather avoid both of those and just go directly to the problem, you know.
Man, let me tell you, that on its own could be like a whole podcast, like just on the importance of that, how to do that. But yeah, and the reason that I've learned, or the reason that I like doing it, is not even because it, like, not necessarily I get some joy out of it. I just know if they don't leave today, they're gonna leave in a year. They're gonna leave in 6 months. So you might as well have that conversation now and get it out of the way. That way, they gotta leave now, they leave now. Yeah, but not 6 months later, not a year down the line. So those tough conversations you gotta have, because you can't escape it. You know what I mean? Like, you can try to get away from it, avoid it, but it's gonna come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure, man. Yeah. Why do you think that it's hard for people to have those conversations?
I think because most people, I would say the vast majority of people, do not like confrontation. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the deeper thing behind that, but I think that's at the base level is that. But I don't look at it as confrontation. Right. I look at, if they don't leave now, they're going to leave later. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, no, and I don't
like. What's your frame of mind when you're? I guess you kind of said it. Your frame of mind when you're going into those tough conversations, because you said, "I don't want to have this. I don't want to have this. I'd rather just go right in the middle."
Right.
So, like, how are you framing it?
Just in my mind is just, again, to set expectations, because that way you're not blindsided.
Oh, so you're okay.
You know what I'm saying?
You don't want to be blindsided.
You don't want the parent, as the parent, you don't want them to be blindsided, and then and you yourself as a coach either. It's like you're just really taking hold of the situation, you know, versus letting it just.
And then, like you said, parent is talking to another parent. You don't know what's going on. Then you get hit out of nowhere. You like, what? I didn't see this.
Just lost like 4 players all at once. No, man. But yeah.
So true, man. So true. All right. That's it on this episode of Evo Toka. Stay tuned.
Yes.
Awesome. Say stop just in time.